The church was silent except for the sound of muffled sobs and the occasional creak of wooden pews as people shifted uncomfortably. My hands trembled in my lap, clutching the folded tissue that had long since soaked through with tears. My husband's casket sat just a few feet away, a stark reminder that the man I loved, the man who had been my only constant in this cruel world, was gone forever. Every breath I took felt like it dragged shards of glass through my lungs. Every second was another reminder that I was now a widow. Alone. I thought the funeral would be the one place my parents couldn't taint with their selfishness, their obsession with my sister, their endless cruelty toward me. I thought, just for a few hours, they might remember they had another daughter, one who had just lost everything. But as I stared blankly at the altar, my mother leaned in close, her perfume choking me, her voice cutting through my grief like a blade. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. You know, she whispered, lips curling into that cruel half-smile she always saved for me. It would really help your sister if you used some of that insurance money for her car. She's been dreaming of a new one for years. Imagine how happy it would make her. I froze, thinking maybe I had misheard. Maybe grief was making me hallucinate. But when I turned to look at her, my mother's expression was calm, calculating, as if what she'd said was the most natural thing in the world. My father, sitting stiffly on her other side, didn't even look at me. He just muttered, "Don't be selfish. Your sister's needs are more important now than ever." My voice cracked as I whispered back, "My husband is dead. I can barely breathe, and you're asking me for money?" My mom sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable, like my pain was a burden. "We're just saying, it's not like you need it all. You don't have kids. Your sister is struggling too, you know. Don't make this about you." The audacity, the heartlessness, made my stomach twist. The only man who had ever loved me unconditionally lay in a box at the front of the room, and all my parents could think about was my sister's dream car. They didn't offer comfort, didn't ask if I was okay, didn't even glance at the casket like they cared I'd lost to the one person who made my life bearable. My sister didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She sat there, perfectly made up, pretending to cry while sneaking glances at me, a smirk tugging at her lips. Like she already believed the money was as good as hers, like my husband's death was nothing more than a convenient windfall for her next luxury toy. I sat there shaking, my hands balled into fists in my lap, my throat aching from holding back the scream clawing its way up. I wanted to stand up and throw them all out, but part of me couldn't even process it. Part of me still hoped they'd realize how monstrous they were being. That hope died when my mom leaned closer, her breath hot in my ear, and said softly, "Come on, dear. He's gone now. At least his death can do something useful." Something inside me snapped in that moment. The grief that had been swallowing me whole was replaced by a cold, razor-sharp clarity. They weren't family. They never had been. They saw me as a tool, my husband as a wallet, and his death as an opportunity. Every cruel thing they had ever done to me, every time they shoved me aside for my sister, every insult, every time they reminded me I was less, it all built to this. And now, in the middle of my husband's funeral, they showed me exactly how little I meant. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't break down. I sat there dry-eyed, staring straight ahead, and in that silence I made myself a promise. My parents and my sister would regret every single moment they had stolen from me, every ounce of pain they had inflicted, every time they treated me like I was worthless. I would not just walk away this time. I would not forgive. I would not forget. They thought his death was their payday. They thought I would roll over, hand them the insurance money, let them profit off my grief like they always profited off my humiliation. They had no idea who they had just created that day. because my husband may have been gone, but his love had left me something far stronger than money. It had left me with the courage to stop being their victim and start being their reckoning. And this time, I wouldn't just make them regret asking me for that money. I would make them regret every breath they had wasted looking down on me. The day after the funeral, the house felt like a tomb. The flowers from the service were already wilting, the scent of lilies mixing with stale air, making me nauseous. My husband's jacket still hung on the back of the chair where he'd left it last, his watch on the nightstand where he'd forgotten to put it away. Everything screamed his absence, but louder than the grief was the memory of my mother's whisper, "At least his death can do something useful." I spent hours sitting in the dark, my mind racing through every insult, every wound my family had carved into me over the years. The time they skipped my graduation to celebrate my sister's new boyfriend, the birthdays they forgot while throwing lavish parties for her. Every Christmas morning where I was handed a sweater 2 sizes too small while she got diamond bracelets. My husband had been the only person who made me feel like I mattered, and now, at the lowest moment of my life, they had shown me they didn't just see me as worthless. They saw my husband's death as their lottery ticket. For the first time in years, I felt something other than grief. A cold, razor-sharp determination began to burn in my chest. This wasn't going to be like all the other times I let them win. They'd spent their whole lives turning me into their punching bag, the forgotten daughter, the one who owed them everything while getting nothing. But this time they had gone too far, and I had something they wanted badly enough to show their true faces: money. I called the insurance company first thing the next morning. The agent was kind, speaking softly as he went over the policy. My husband had left everything to me, enough to take care of my future, enough to give me stability after everything life had ripped away. But instead of thinking about myself, all I could hear were my mother's words at the funeral. My sister's smug grin. My father's muttered, "Don't be selfish." They had made one thing clear: they weren't going to stop. They would circle me like vultures until I gave in or broke completely. So I decided to feed them poison disguised as kindness. 2 days later, I invited my parents and sister to lunch at a quiet upscale restaurant. They arrived dressed like they were meeting a banker, not their grieving daughter. My sister was all smiles, fake sympathy dripping from her voice. "Oh, honey, you're holding up so well," she said, patting my hand like I was a child. My mother didn't bother with small talk. She went straight to it. "So, about the insurance money." I looked each of them in the eye, my face calm, my voice soft. "You're right," I said, and their greedy eyes lit up. "I don't need it all. I've been thinking a lot about what's fair." I sipped my coffee slowly, letting them lean closer like predators about to pounce. "But fair," I said, smiling faintly, "has never really been this family's specialty, has it?" They frowned but said nothing, waiting for me to keep talking. "I'll give you money," I continued, "but not for free. You've always said I was nothing, that I owed you everything for even existing. So let's make it official." I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside was a contract perfectly legal, drawn up by a lawyer I had hired the same day I got the policy details. It stated that my parents and sister would receive a generous monthly allowance from me, on the condition that they publicly signed a statement of debt acknowledging every cruel thing they had done to me. Years of neglect, emotional abuse, their own words admitting they treated me as second best. The document was set to be filed and made public if I ever wanted to release it. At first, they laughed, thinking it was a joke, but when I didn't join in, my mother's face turned red. "What is this?" she snapped. "You expect us to sign this garbage? To admit lies just for a few dollars?" I leaned forward, my smile sharper now. "It's not a few dollars. It's enough for a new car, a new wardrobe, a dozen vacations for my perfect sister. Isn't that what you wanted? I'm just giving you what you've always demanded, my dignity in writing. The money's on the table, but you're going to pay for it in shame." Their silence was thick. My sister shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the pages, her greed warring with her pride. My dad slammed his fist on the table, muttering curses, but I stayed calm, letting their anger wash over me. For once, I had the power and I wasn't giving it back. I stood, gathering my things. "Think it over," I said, sliding a pen onto the folder. "You've spent my entire life making me regret being born. Now you can regret asking me for my husband's blood money. You'll sign, or you'll watch every lie you've told about being the perfect family burn in public court documents." I walked away, my heart pounding, knowing they were cornered for the first time in their lives. They wanted my husband's money? They'd have to sell their pride to get it, and I would enjoy every second of watching them choke on the taste of their own cruelty. 2 weeks passed before my phone lit up with my mother's name. I let it ring 3 times before answering, knowing what was coming. Her voice was sharp, brittle, and dripping with fake composure. "We've decided to sign," she said flatly, like every word burned her tongue. "Your father and sister agreed. Just bring the money. We don't need your theatrics." I almost laughed. They thought this was still a negotiation, that they could make demands in a deal they no longer controlled. "Good," I said simply. "Tomorrow morning. My lawyer will be present. You'll sign, get your first transfer, and we'll never speak again." They arrived at the lawyer's office dressed as if they were walking into a victory parade. My sister even had the audacity to joke, "Finally, something good came out of that tragic marriage of yours." I didn't react. Instead, I slid the papers toward them, watched their eyes skim over the legal text that laid bare decades of emotional abuse and neglect in their own signed confession. Every word was true, every sentence a nail in the coffin of their so-called reputation. My lawyer glanced at me once, silently confirming, and I nodded. The room stayed silent except for the scratching of their pens, signing away what little dignity they had left. When it was done, I calmly handed over an envelope, not cash, just a single check for the first installment, and stood up to leave. "Wait," my mom snapped. "Where's the rest? We expected more than this." I turned to her slowly, letting the cold satisfaction show on my face. "You'll get it," I said softly. "Just not the way you think." The next day, their confession statement, notarized and legally binding, went public. Every neighbor, every friend, every colleague they had boasted to about being perfect parents saw the truth in their own handwriting, how they had neglected, belittled, and emotionally abused their own daughter for decades, how they'd tried to profit off her husband's death without a shred of remorse. By nightfall, their phones were blowing up, not with sympathy, but with disgust. Invitations to social events vanished overnight. My dad's old buddies pulled out of every business deal he'd been clinging to. My mother's charity circles shunned her completely. My sister's boyfriend dumped her publicly, saying he didn't want to marry into that mess of a family. The cherry on top? The monthly allowance they signed for was tied to my own terms. I had the legal right to stop payments if they ever harassed me again, and every cent was documented as charity support for abusive parents, a label they could never erase from their records. Weeks later, I drove past their once pristine house. The lawn was unkempt, the mailbox stuffed with unopened bills, their cars gone. They had sold off everything they could to recover from the scandal, yet the shame clung to them like smoke they couldn't wash off. They had thought my husband's death would fund their luxury, that they could leech from me one last time and win. Instead, they had signed away the only thing they valued more than money, their precious image. Standing outside my own new home, the one my husband's insurance helped me buy, I watched Eli laughing in the yard for the first time in months. I whispered to the wind, this is what he would have wanted, a life far away from their poison. And for the first time since that funeral, I felt truly at peace. My parents hadn't just lost their payday. They had lost the mask they'd worn all their lives, their power, their reputation, and the right to ever stand over me again. They wanted my husband's death to be their gain. Instead, it was their undoing. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where